Hello everyone, this is DJ Asclepius and welcome to Podcasts and Poetry. This is the part of our program where we shine the spotlight on the creative talent in our very own Shroud of the Avatar community. So just sit back and relax for some wonderful stories, poems and music. Well, hi and welcome everybody to another episode of Podcast and Poetry. Nice to have your company. We've got a nice collection of stories for you this morning, so let's get right into it. Here we go. Hello everyone, this is Asclepius with the next chapter in this wonderful story by Althadur entitled The Pilgrimage of Virtue. Background music by Smart Sound. Chapter 4, The Sailor's Tale. The campfire crackled as we all got comfortable. Our eyes, and more importantly our ears, were directed to the sailor. "You are certain it is safe? I heard there is a troll that lives in the pass," the scholar said. "There are 9 of us," the sailor said. "Not all of us are fighters," the tailor added. "Virtue is on our side," the elder said. "Tell us your story, sailor." "Worry not, this is a happy tale," began the sailor. "It ends well, unlike the soldiers. My tale is about a boy, a man, verily, when this tale is all told. He was born in a small village in Vedantis, in a modest home. He had little to show for himself. His father was a cobbler. His mother was a seamstress. They made clothing and shoes in the hamlet they lived in. It kept them fed, but gave them little else. This boy was well liked, true to himself, fair to look at, despite the dirt that was seemingly always on his young face. His heart was set on the mayor's daughter. She was his age and beautiful. She was well dressed, wealthy, and well educated for the area. She wasn't a Brittany scholar or a wealthy lady of Resolute, but she was beautiful. Our hero courted her, picked daffodils and dandelions for her, cleaned his face in the puddles of the street, and learned to sew his own fine clothes from his mother. His love, the mayor's daughter, endured him. She smiled and accepted the flowers. She spent time with him and was kind to him. But she did always speak about going to harvest to live. Other times she spoke about leaving to Valhold, or even Brittany. She wanted to live in a large city with stone houses and stone streets and hundreds of people. Our hero smiled and nodded and said, "Wherever you go, I will follow." He said this so often that the mayor's daughter began to believe it to be true. By the time they were in their late teens, they were the couple of the hamlet. When they walked by, hand in hand, people would smile and say, "There walks true love," and "He saw through the clasps and silk, and she saw through the burlap and dirt." It was true, you know. They did love each other, as much as they were able to. Time went on. Our hero wanted to give the entire island of Norgard to his love. So he started to look at how to get her there and give her a place to live in a stone house on a stone street. He needed a job, something that would pay their way and would buy that stone house on the stone street. He couldn't make that coin in the small hamlet they lived in. "I must go, my love," he said one day, holding her hand tightly. "No, I can't go on without you," she replied. They went on like this, as lovers do. Our hero eventually persuaded his love that he must indeed go. He was offering her everything she wanted, and it was the only way she believed she could get it. They would talk through letters. He would constantly update her on how things were progressing and how close they were to moving to Norgard. I won't tell you the details of what he did, but he worked, more than most would. His heart was in it. He worked 2 jobs if finding work was difficult. He worked through his free time. He worked the land, on boats, underground, protecting caravans, anything that gave coin. And he saved every coin he could. And he wrote a book of letters to his love. He spoke of his work, where he went, his friends, and how close he was to delivering her to her dream. Her responses were always joyful, excited. She was very thankful and reminded him in every letter of what she wanted and how much she loved him. As time went on, the letters from the mayor's daughter got shorter and further apart. Our hero kept working. When his co-workers went to the brothel, he would stay away. Even close to the end of his work, when he hadn't received a letter in months. He would imagine the delays in her responses would be from her travelling to him to surprise him one day, maybe tomorrow. But she never did come to him. Years after, he returned home. He was so excited to see the mayor's daughter. When he finally saw her, he grabbed her and held her close and started telling her to gather her things. She was shy, hesitant, and avoided his gaze. She began. He knew, right then and there. It all made sense. She didn't wait. It took him years to get what she needed. He nodded, gave her one last kiss on her cheek, and handed her a bag of coin, then walked away. That's not a happy ending, the smith yelled. No, and why not? The sailor replied. Also, I'm not yet finished. I don't see how this is a good happy story, and I don't see the value in it, the smith said. Well, you see, it's quite simple, the sailor said. The entire time, the boy, our hero, kept true to his love. He lived his entire life in her service. In the end, when she proved not to have been true to him, he had the courage to remain true to her. Hence, he gave her what he had earned for her, and the courage to return to the unknown, this time by himself for the first time. We all grew silent. Truth and courage. The boy, the man now, is free to do what he will, knowing that he held true his oath. He will find happiness in the end, the sailor said. I don't think, the elder said, clearing his throat softly, that we should explain our tales. They may affect us differently, teach us lessons that we may not know we needed to be taught. They may leave us riddles that we may need to answer ourselves. After all, that is why we are on this pilgrimage. And so we all agreed. Some of us got into our bedrolls, while others had hushed conversations. The soldier kept watch, probably for the troll. And up next is an item from the New Britannia Theatre Troupe, The Conversations in Paxlair. The New Britannia Theatre Troupe presents Conversations in Paxlair. Written by Wombi. Produced and directed by Asclepius. Music Supervisor and Director of Public Relations, Amber Rain. Stage Manager and Technical Director, Sir Style Teckle. Voice cast: Dr. Shroud as Harry, Lord Baldrith as Fred, Lady Adnor as Citizen 1, Asclepius as Citizen 2, Cordeline Valcaris as Guard, Sophie as Christine, Jinx as Oracle Agent, Amber Rain as Sarah, and Asclepius as the narrator. Every day, the market square in Paxlair is a bustling centre of activity. Stallholders stand ready to sell their wares, trying to catch the attention of passers-by. However, what seems a typical day at the market with innocent and hard-working merchants can be something quite different beneath the surface. Let us listen in for a moment to the adventures of three such merchants. Fred and Harry are at their stalls, chatting to each other in between selling priceless treasures to customers. Sarah, at an adjoining stall, is quietly going about her business.
Fresh fish, get your fresh fish here. Caught this morning in Spindrift Bay. Look into their eyes and see how fresh they are.
A well-dressed lady approaches Harry's stall and catches his eye.
You, madam, one glance at your impressive attire tells me that you have exquisite taste. It is so refreshing to encounter a person of such refinement. Only one such as yourself could possibly have a palate sufficiently refined to appreciate the delicate flavours of my exclusive produce. Take these extremely rare wobbegong fillets, for example, caught fresh this morning.
I'm not familiar with wobbegong. What breed of fish is that?
I'm not surprised that you have not heard of it, madam, for it is an extremely rare delicacy and dangerous to capture. This very catch took the lives of 2 fishermen, and naturally, when I heard of this, I immediately brought the catch and notified a certain gentleman who lives on a hill not far from here. Professional discretion, of course, prevents me from revealing his name, but he has a standing order for any items of exceptional rarity and taste that I secure. He will be serving wobbegong as the main course at his banquet this evening. Fortunately for you, I kept 4 fillets with the intention of surprising my wife. Sadly, she was unexpectedly called away to tend to her sick mother. I am therefore prepared to part with them for a mere 500 gold apiece. That is considerably less than I received from a certain gentleman whose name I cannot mention, but you impress me and I am prepared to let them go at cost.
Well, I do feel like I deserve something a little special. All right, I will take your remaining fillets.
As his customer departs, Harry turns to Fred.
Where was I? Oh yes. So anyhow, there I was, hiding in the wardrobe, hurriedly putting on my pants, when Dagnar comes racing up the stairs and bursts into the room, accusing his wife of infidelity. I can hear him noisily searching everywhere while he berates his wife, so I open the wardrobe door and wave to him. While he's standing there looking half furious, half confused, I say, "Ah, thank goodness you've arrived. The Oracle has an important job for you."
You certainly like to live dangerously, Fred. What happened next?
Well, fortunately, Dagnar's curiosity overcame his anger, and rather than attacking me, he paused, saying, "What is the meaning of this? You have 5 seconds to explain yourself before I turn you into sausage meat."
A man wanders through the marketplace and pauses in front of Fred's stall.
"Good morning, sir. Can I interest you in the freshest produce in the entire Vale? Just this morning we received a rare, limited shipment of these incredible new Doric seeds, which are selling fast. I suggest you act quickly if you don't want to miss out."
What's a Doric?
You haven't heard? The plant they grow into produces incredible fruit. They are unlike anything you've ever tried before, and they keep for ages, an ideal snack at more refined parties, or they can be used as a nutritious, lightweight provision on long journeys.
Can you show me their fruit?
If only I could. Sadly, the fruit are always sold out within minutes of obtaining a new supply. If someone were to plant and harvest these, I would pay good money for a steady supply. I would do it myself, but sadly I do not own land.
How much for your entire collection of seeds?
The entire collection? Well, I guess I could let him go for 1,000 gold, but I would be very reluctant to do so. I would need a guarantee that I would get first refusal on the purchase of any fruit that they produce.
Yeah, that seems fair. Agreed. Here you go. As the customer departs, Fred turns back to Harry.
So, what happened next?
Well, as you know, Dagnar is not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I turned to him and said, "What I am about to tell you is top secret information, and I can only reveal it if you agree to assist the Oracle in an operation of the utmost secrecy and importance." Naturally, he wasn't about to turn down what he thought was a direct request from the Oracle, so he nodded in acquiescence. I then asked if he agreed to serve the Oracle faithfully and without question, and never to reveal anything that he learned in her service. Dagnar replied, "I do," at which point I told him that the occupant of the row house next door was a member of a banned Obsidian group, and was no doubt plotting an insurrection. I told him that I was one of 2 operatives that the Oracle intended to place in row houses on either side of the subject's home, and that Dagnar's wardrobe was ideally placed to enable me to observe him. Naturally, I would need access to the wardrobe during the day so that I could observe the subject using a small hole drilled through the wall. I added that the Oracle would look favorably on him for providing assistance in this matter.
He bought it?
Hook, line, and sinker. To this day, I regularly visit his wife while he is away at work, and provide him with frequent updates on the progress of the evil Obsidian plot. Speaking of evil plots, Harry, did you ever discover why the house next door to yours is haunted?
Indeed. A rather tale to this. As you know, the sounds from that house have been keeping me up for weeks. Since it is at the end of the street and thus has no other neighbours, I have been the only one to suffer. Getting a local guard to take an interest proved fruitless, so I decided to investigate on my own.
And to think, only a few minutes ago you accused me of living dangerously. Go on.
Well, since the house has been unoccupied for years, I figured the chances of the owner turning up were minimal, and forced the window to gain entry. The front room was pitch dark, and I dared not use a light spell for fear of attracting a passing guard. Fortunately, all these row houses share an identical layout, so I began to slowly feel my way up the stairs. It was at that moment that I heard an eerie sound that had woken me every night for weeks, coming from the top floor.
At this point, a guard enters, walking purposefully to Harry's stall. He is accompanied by a mature woman who is dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief.
Greetings, citizen. How may I help you this fine day? I have only the freshest fish for sale, caught this morning in Spindrift Bay. Look into their eyes and see how fresh they are.
Is this the one?
Yes, that's him. He used to have a stall in Owl's Head till he was chased out of town. This is the evil snake who promised to marry my daughter and then skip town with the dowry.
What do you have to say for yourself, citizen?
Roland. I love my identical twin brother dearly, but he leads a troubled life. I have tried many times to place him on the right path, but I fear that we are destined to be complete opposites. Why, only last week, as I was donating food to the poor, I thought of him. I wondered if there was not some way that I had overlooked, whereby I could have steered him towards the path of virtue.
Ha! What a preposterous tale! Only an idiot would believe you have an identical twin brother. There is no doubting that you are the despicable cad who broke the heart of my poor, weeping daughter. It's a tragedy that in this so-called enlightened metropolis, being the rear end of a kobold is not a capital offense.
I have an identical twin brother. He is a great disappointment to the family.
Please believe me, lady, when I tell you how mortified I am that your poor daughter has been yet another victim of my despicable brother. Much as it pains me to say this, I really hope that he can be caught and punished before he brings more misery to this world.
I know how you feel. My brother Reginald has done untold damage to our family name. Please, let me know if you hear of Roland's whereabouts.
The guard nods curtly at Harry and starts to walk away.
What? You believed that drivel? Come back and arrest the lying scoundrel!
Christine wrings her hands in frustration and hurries off after the guard.
I believe you were ascending the stairs. Please continue.
Indeed. After cautiously inching my way up the stairs, I eventually reached the top floor. With each step, the sound had been growing louder. But as I reached the top of the stairs, it suddenly stopped. The door to the front room was open, and a thin shaft of moonlight forced its way through a dirty broken window, allowing me to barely discern some vague shapes. I tiptoed towards the room from whence I was certain the sound had come. Reaching the door, I peered inside. In the far corner of the room, I could see a dark, huddled shape with a single glowing eye. Gathering my courage, I forced myself to approach that strange beast, and it was then I discovered the true nature of my nightly tormentor.
Go on.
It was an alpha vibration amplifier sitting on the bedside table. A small rodent had taken up residence inside, and its nocturnal ventures occasionally switched the device on or off. Since it was not turned to a station, the result was a strange hissing sound that had been waking me up at night.
Great story, Harry. Terrific climax. Now I know how your wife feels. Anyhow, there goes the sun. Shall we pack up and adjourn to Wodie's?
Of course. Why should today be any different from every other day?
Harry and Fred pack up their wares and head off toward Wodie's tavern, chuckling as they go. Meanwhile, a mysterious person approaches Sarah's stall.
The Oracle needs a report, Agent Sarah.
As directed, I have observed the behavior of Fred and Harry. It appears that Fred has been spreading misinformation about the Oracle, and I overheard him mention an obsidian plot. Harry has been breaking and entering houses in Paxlair.
Excellent work, Agent Sarah. I think they both warrant closer scrutiny. They may very well be instigators of a serious plot against the Oracle. Commencing tomorrow, Agents McQuaid and Walker will begin around-the-clock surveillance. Rest assured that if these two turn out to be Obsidian agents, they will both be taken care of.
Music credits. Town Theme by Space Bards. Street by Space Bards. Next we have a brand new chapter of Black Rose Chronicles, read this week by Addie.
Black Rose Chronicles 20. This is Addie with the next chapter of this fascinating saga concerning Belladonna Rose's adventures in Novia. The night went quietly, except for the faint snoring from the spare room. At least I knew the man in there was alive, so I took my chance at a peaceful night's sleep. And it was. When I rose that morning, I washed and got dressed and made my way to the kitchen to make a hearty breakfast for my guest. But when I got there, he was already there standing at the stove cooking. The smell of bacon and eggs was so inviting, and the steaming pot of tea on the table drew me closer. "Morning, sleepyhead. Hope you don't mind me cooking up some of your bacon and fresh eggs. I woke with terrible hunger. I guess your potion was indeed what I needed. I feel like a new man," he chuckled as he kept on with his cooking. Aye, for the first time in a while, I slept undisturbed. No dreams bothered me. Still having those, I see. Yes, well, good thing for me then. Or I might have met with the wrong end of that dagger you keep on your bedside. Ha! I have never been that startled from my dreams. There is always a first time. Smiling and laughing, he brought the wooden bowl full of fried potatoes, eggs, and bacon and plopped it down on the table. Reaching the nearby shelf, he grabbed plates and silverware and we began to eat. It was the most glorious breakfast I had had in a long time. Settling back in his chair as he sipped his tea, he looked warily at me. He knew something was on my mind. Clearing his throat, he spoke softly. "What's going on with you, Rose? You seem preoccupied with deep thoughts." After a minute or two, I explained that I was thinking of taking up the magic again. Nodding, he let me continue to relay my thoughts to him. Alchemy and magic is deep in my soul, as with all of us girls in my family. But since I arrived here, I have put most of it aside, only using it when I really need it. I thought about taking it up again. Mainly the alchemy part. He looked at me over his cup and nodded again. "What is stopping you? If you have the skill, it should be just a matter of practice. And mind you, I know your healing magical and potion works fine. Just look at me right now." Smiling, he gestured at himself with a flourish, as if him sitting there spry and near perfect was proof of my skill. "Yes, I can do some, but not to the degree that my cousin can do. I need to learn things from this world. Mainly how I happen upon things that seem familiar but aren't, if that makes sense." Setting down his cup, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Then what you need to do is find someone to teach you. I suggest going about Head and Vale and search out the alchemists and see if one of them will help you. If none are here, then you can go to Novia. The bigger cities I would steer clear of, though. Those arrogant snobs will only half teach you so you don't steal their business." Laughing out loud, I looked at his face. He was dead serious, and he was right. I remember when I went to Owl's Head to talk about the undead, and when I reached the guardhouse on the hill, Delbert Enmar was in charge. He went on and on about the bandits and the undead. His best man, Winslow, was gravely ill, yet there was no one in town that could help him. He bade me to go to Kingsport to find a healer. I agreed. Before I left, I checked on Winslow. He was in bad shape. His injury was more from a head wound. He was in so much pain. With my back to the other guards in the room, I ran my hands above and over his body and head, spoke softly a spell. His labored breathing slowed, and a sense of comfort took over his face. Placing a cool cloth to his head, I stood and walked out. My healing was not that good, but it was enough to give him some peace until I could find the medicine he needed. I told Astor about that, and he nodded his understanding. Yes, Enmar is an idiot for certain. And that lot that lives up there in Owl's Head are too worried about themselves than to worry about anyone else. Hence the high wall around the city and that blasted moon tower that keeps the undead away from them. I laughed at him. When Astor Cerebus had an opinion on someone or something, he cut to the bone with his comments. I told him the story of how I thought to ride to Solace Bridge to the alchemist there, since I knew his potions were good. But that was too far, and Winslow needed help sooner. It would take me too long to get to Solace Bridge outskirts, so Kingsport it was. When I rode into town, the guards nodded to me. They had seen me several times before, so they knew I was from close by. I went to the alchemist shop near the docks, but that woman was more worried about her errant husband and where he was. I came from the shop, and a beggar quickly gave me the name of another woman in town. For a coin, that is. Giving him the coin, he told me where to find her. It was getting dark, so I made my way to the market area and tethered my horse to the hitching post, slid the saddle off, and went into the tavern. Setting down the saddle near the door, I walked to an empty table. The bard was in full vocal attunement, singing some bawdy ballad about the seafaring adventure. Chuckling to myself, I knew that tune, but the words were a mite different. A young girl came to the table and took my order. A pint of horrible ale and trencher of meat, cheese, and day-old bread soon appeared. Soon a lovely-looking lady entered through the back door. She looked about the room and saw me. Approaching, she touched the chair across from me. With my approval, she sat, ordered a wine and a trencher for herself. After a minute or two, she introduced herself as Julia, an alchemist. Now, if that didn't beat all, just the person I was looking for, and now she sat at my table. It was almost too coincidental. I heard Uncle Jacob's voice in my head. Fortune favor the foolish. After a short bit of small talk, I told her of my task, and she immediately told me to meet her in the morning at her wagon just across from the tailoring tent. She would fix up the medicine needed for Winslow. Nodding in agreement, she stood, left some coin on the table, and went back out the same door she came in. The girl who was cleaning up told me of an empty bed upstairs I could use. Giggling softly, she joked that most in the tavern would end up sleeping where they dropped. I couldn't help but laugh along with her. Drinking the last of the horrible ale, I grabbed my saddle and bags and made my way up the stairs. 2 rooms. One marked ladies, one marked gents. Inside, there were 4 poorly crafted beds, but I had slept on worse. Pulling off my boots, I tucked them under the bed, stretched out, and sleep came over me. At some point in the night, a blanket had made its way over me.
Musical pieces in this item are courtesy of PGN Music.
Are you looking for action, adventure, and epic loot? Avatar Relics can't really help you with the first 2, but we have the 3rd one in the bag. Use code AvatarsRadio at avatarrelics.com.
You are tuned in to Avatars Radio, independent community radio of the Avatars. This special message is to thank you for your years of support, Avatars. We count on our Avatar patrons to keep our lights on and broadcasting all of your great music and dramatic audio works. If you choose to become a patron of Avatars Radio, that means you are a patron of the metaverse arts and a guardian of the airwaves. Congrats! Achievement unlocked. Special thanks to our current Patreon supporters Istral Miroa, avatarrelics.com and Ghost Turtle. To learn how you can become a patron and guardian of the airwaves, visit avatarsradio.rocks/patron today.
You are listening to Avatars Radio. Radio of the Avatars. When our DJs aren't live, our content is 100% community created. If you are a musician or other audio artist and would like to have your work aired on Avatars Radio, contact us today.
Absolutely, and don't forget to support our patrons. And yes, if you feel like contributing any music, stories, whatever, even becoming a DJ yourself, we would love to hear from you. Okay, next up, continuation of a fantastic series of chapters, stories by Algarian Dicali. Hello everyone, this is Asclepius with the next chapter of this wonderful saga by Algarian Dicali. It is entitled The Second Era. The age of the warring cities begins. On Moonendai, the 9th of April, the month of the farmer, the life-giving season of spring, in the lingering night, a new era began. Background music is by Smart Sound. In the turbulent second era of New Britannia, the warlords of all the kingdoms ravaged the lands, causing mayhem throughout the recently resettled world above their former cavernous homes. This age was a darkened time, starved for a uniting strength. The Titans had yet to spread their blessings of love, courage, and truth, and the peoples were lost without the mysterious guidance of the Oracle, which, in time, would steer many to their elusive destinies. As the scales weighed heavily towards chaos, it became a lost world, a world without virtue, and it was the era in which the Obsidian Eye was born. To what purpose the book stole into the meagre farm boy's hands, the young one did not know, or perhaps simply did not remember. One's fate oft is written without the practicalities of reason. What was, is. What is, will be. And what will be, is foretold. Some say the boy stole the Librum, but many theologians argue fate handed him this bounty, for no other choice was offered to him. One cannot deny their destiny. So by that right, the book was always his. This volume of small metallic pages contained the words of Sariah the Blind. The message bestowed clarity where there was confusion. The boy's path was aligned to his true course. As he grew, so did his focus and resolve. With each passing year, the boy became the man, and the man became a scholar, a grand sorcerer, and then master to the Obsidian Cabal. He was to become the Obsidian Eye. In this time of utter turmoil, the world was ripe for conquest. The warlords would never guess what would befall them. As they were distracted by their greed and territorial squabbles, The power of the obsidian eye thrived unabated. His reach stretched across the lands as dark sorcerers bowed into his service. His army was forming, and the world would soon know its conqueror and master. The prophecy of the obsidian eye. The world is fallen into chaos. Men reached up in anger and shattered the sky. Its blackness falls to earth like a rain of dark glass. The ordered customs and rows of society are shattered. All men stumble in the blinding light of a blood-red dawn. Sightless who will not see, deaf to the truth they will not hear. Mewing and wailing of and for themselves, they kill with discordant and untamed shouts the melodic order of their better selves. Yet, from the obsidian's fall shall arise, seen only by the ordered eye, the blade which shall render order in their midst. Silence the voices who screech outside the ordered tune. Darken the eyes of unwelcome vision, and bring one vision, one voice, one song, to a world reborn in perfect twilight, supreme and ordered once more in its flawlessness, of one thought and purpose born and died, until only the night remains. Hello everyone, this is Asclepius, with another instalment of the thrilling story from Lendrick, entitled Rise of the Ravagers, Chapter 4. Music by Smart Sound. Chapter 4. City Life. 2 days later, city outskirts of Brittany. The rain finally let up as Glindril and Alexius made their way south towards Brittany and hopefully able to finally catch up with Slovenia. There were many times where Glindril had to catch himself and think twice about what he was doing, and did he really feel the feelings he thought he felt? Shaking his head forlornly to himself, it was thinking like that which would muddle the mind and cause him to doubt himself. Focus on what's at hand and what's at stake. Slovenia's family are worried sick, and it's up to Glindril to not only catch up with her, but see if he can make her see sense through the charms and manipulations of this so-called wizard. Slovenia wouldn't even know he was following her, and had she, would she have attempted to stop him? To somehow lay some trap to thwart his progress? Destiny has a funny time with situations such as these. What, for example, had he not ever met her that fateful day? He would have been none the wiser, and certainly wouldn't be far from home now, moving into human territory to a city that he had never visited and could be deadly and hostile, all on the off chance that, what? She will run into his arms and declare her undying love and gratitude for him following her? More likely, she will despise and hate him even more, and that wizard might even turn him into a frog. Still, a frog wouldn't have this. No, he must stop being so negative. Focus on the goal at hand. Focus. Glindril must have been shaking his head or muttering more than he thought, as it drew Alexius's attention, who gave him an incredulous look. Everything all right, Glenn? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe you're right in some respects. What am I doing? Out here. Dragged you away from home. And for what? I sometimes second-guess my intentions and motivations, and wonder what I actually hope to accomplish if I catch up to her. Well, we're going to know soon enough, Alexis indicated with his head, and Glindril looked up. The town gates were a sight to behold, with a large line of traffic flowing in and out. "It's massive," Glendril breathed in awe. "I've never seen anything so big. And how did they construct this?" The castle looming in the distance. "Must be magic," Alexius replied offhandedly, and didn't seem to be as impressed as Glendril. "With these many people, surely they won't mind a couple more elves, no?" Glendril stated hopefully. "I would expect not. We don't present as bandits or thieves. We'll just have to play it by a pointy ear." They moved steadily towards the gate, flowing into the line of slow-moving traffic, and eventually, inexorably, they approached the gates and their perspective changed, zooming into the guard booths flanking the gates, and a pair of what must be city watch guards checking everyone as they passed through. "What be your business in Brittany then, lads?" the guard stated, and brought Glendril out of his daze of being overwhelmed to realise he was being addressed. "We're looking for a friend who we believe came this way a few days prior," replied Glendril, thinking that the truth was always the best. "Well, okay, but you'll have to check your weapons," the guard replied, and indicated to their bows and daggers on their belts. Glendril was loath to give up his ability to defend himself, and if needed hunt for food, but also didn't want to cause any trouble, and expected they should have them returned to them upon their departure. Glendril gave Alexius a nod to indicate to give up the weapons, and unshouldered his bow, pulling out the dagger from his belt and handing it to the guard, hilt first. The guards placed a number on each, and then gave the two a corresponding scrap of parchment with the same number on it. "For when you leave, don't lose that, or you won't be getting these back. On your way then." They kept moving, not wanting to hold up the line for others. Upon entering the city, the sights and sounds and smells to Glendril were assaulting his senses from all sides. Glendril started to feel claustrophobic from the intense hustle and bustle. The street they were in was called King's Walk, and it curved away into the distance. Just breaking in, if you are still in Immortal City in the studio and wondering where we've all vanished to, it looks as if there was a server-side patch or something in the game, and we sort of had to log out and log back in, and now we're in the new instance. So we haven't vanished, we haven't deserted you. If you just log out, log back in, you'll be back with us. Lined by shops and filled with people of all shapes and sizes. There must have been thousands of people to a one, and Glendril was starting to wish for his green forests and diamond falls. It was very overwhelming. Looking to Alexius for support, he seemed to be taking it all in his stride, which Glendril found little comfort in. "Been here before, have we?" Glendril had to almost shout to be heard. "Yeah, my uncle used to bring me here when I was little to do trading. Been used to it ever since," replied Alexius. "So what do we do now? Where do we go?" yelled Glendril. "First thing is to find ourselves an inn, so we can get rid of these packs and have something to eat. Follow me, and I'll lead you to a nice establishment my uncle used to visit. It's called the Dusty Cutlass Inn, and although somewhat rowdy sometimes, they got some pirates now and then. The food is delicious, and the bed's soft," said Alexius. Glendril merely nodded and followed his friend. As they walked, having to push their way through the crowd, it was all Glendril could do to keep his friend in sight, and after traversing numerous side streets, Alexius indicated to Glendril and pointed. Off in the distance was a 2-story building, and out the front a sign that read, "The Dusty Cutlass," with a cutlass hanging underneath. Approaching the inn, Glendril noticed a young human boy, no more than maybe 7 or 8, quickly walk up behind one woman and quickly cut the purse strings that held a pouch around her waist. With a frightened yelp and scream, the young boy disappeared into the crowd and was gone. Glendrill's eyes flared and yelled out, just about to run after him, when Alexius grabbed an arm. "Don't bother, he'll be long gone now, and that purse palmed off to numerous others. You'll never find it or recover her money." Alexius was matter-of-fact about it and seemed resigned. Glendrill still fumed about the injustice of it all. "City life, I guess, my friend," Alexius added, attempting to allay Glendrill's temper. "Come on, let's get inside before we are next." Alexius let go of Glendrill's arm and entered the inn, Glendrill still feeling outraged. The Dusty Cutlass was a modest-looking establishment on the inside, and got its namesake from the cutlass relic mounted above the bar, which was never cleaned, and thereby covered in grime, soot, and, of course, dust. The innkeeper was a portly fellow with rosy cheeks and beard. Recognition in his eyes upon seeing Alexius got a hearty handshake. "Aye, me lad, haven't seen you in years. Look at you now. How's your uncle?" "Passed away, I'm afraid, my good, Trent, wasn't it?" "Yeah, he had a nasty run-in when a pack of kobolds," Alexius lamented, a sorrowful look passing over his face. "Kobolds, really? That's not how I pictured him going out. What can I get for you and your friend?" We need a room, 2 separate beds, and 2 ales. We've travelled a long way," said Alexius. "Aye, I have a room that would suit, and the ales are on me as a parting gift for your uncle." "Thank ye, we really appreciate it," Alexius replied. Thank you, very kind of you," Glendrill stammered, still overwhelmed by the city, and now from some child stealing to a generous innkeeper. Glendrill just wanted to curl up and sleep. "Find a seat, I will bring out your ale, and Grace here will see to your things and make up the room for you." "Thank you again, you have been most generous with my family, Trent." Alexius shook his hand again. The two sat down and looked about while waiting for their drinks. The inn was busy, as it was around midday, and everyone was having their midday meal. The ale was brought out in short order, and, while bitter, was cool and refreshing. Glendrill almost downed his in a single gulp. "Whoa, easy there. I don't want to have to carry you upstairs," Alexius exclaimed. Glendrill returned him with a watery look and loud belch. "That was good for sure," Glendrill slurred. "Don't drink much, do you? No more for you, then." Alexius drank, but not nearly so fast. "After this, let's get some rest before evening, and then we can ask around about Slovenia." Glendrill yawned and laid his head down on the table. "Good idea. I'm sick of travelling." When Alexius finished his ale, the two slowly ascended to their room, which was discovered to be neat and clean. Fresh sheets, a bath with hot rocks and steaming water, with clean towels, and their belongings neatly stacked in a corner. Glendrill made a beeline to the first bed, and without undressing, collapsed on top of it. He was asleep before his head even touched the pillow. And they all lived happily ever after. Okay, well, maybe they didn't quite live happily ever after, but you never know. Okay, we have picked up a couple more followers, and special thanks to Drocus and One Replay. Thanks for following, and thanks to all our supporters and people who listen and support the station. We really do appreciate it. Okay, finally, we've got another chapter in the continuing story of the Stone Dragon series, again with the lovely voice of Addie. Here goes.
Chapter 9. Kobolds, Trolls, and Liches. Oh my! Torgun stopped to check the torch supply they had left piled along the tunnel before their descent into the dark, after he ran back up the main corridor. He also took a good look at his own equipment while he waited for the others to climb out of the sloping tunnel behind him. Doing the chores had kept his mind occupied, but as he cleaned the blade of his axe, he had time to think. He was shaken by what had been done to the human volunteers in the experiment room. Those volunteers who were experimented on didn't get anything out of the deal. It was not mutual. It was torture. People should not have to suffer nor lose their lives simply for the curiosity of others. Shuddering a little, he could not help but hope that he would overcome whatever other evils he would find ahead. With a deep breath and nod of his head to these private conclusions, he turned and watched Phlebas, Lucy, and finally Zarina emerge from the smaller tunnel. They had a moment to speak quietly among themselves and check their own gear as the newcomers caught their breath from the climb out of the troll pit. What was done to those people? Phlebas couldn't even finish his sentence. He simply pursed his lips and shook his head. Zarina looked away from the others and kept her thoughts to herself, but the slump in her shoulders was obvious. Now we have to watch for kobolds, liches, and trolls? Lucy asked as she looked both ways down the tunnels anxiously. Who doesn't like variety? Torgun joked, trying to lighten his own mood and that of his sisters too. With a crooked half-smile, Lucy answered, Ale, yes. Enemies? Not so much. She shrugged and chuckled. I prefer a nice, strong, dark ale and a single weak enemy. This way! Torgun peered ahead into the semi-dark hallway that went on and on. The others followed quietly. Zarina at the end of the line watched their rear. Here we go, wandering throughout the mine so black, and as we go I love to sing, my rucksack on my back. Lucy stopped for a minute to light her torch, then continued loudly. Come on, join in! Valderie, Valdera, Valderie, Valdera, ha 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 ha. Her chorus rang out and echoed down the tunnel. Shh! Lucy, are you trying to get us killed? Zarina shushed her friend. Lucy shot her an annoyed look. How do you not know a single mining song at all? Then they heard movement ahead of them in the tunnels, and Lucy looked stricken. Zarina had her bow ready to shoot before anyone even blinked. I'm sorry, Lucy whispered as her brother withdrew his axe from its holster. I was trying to lighten the mood, too. When Zarina saw Torgun drop his weapon back into its holster and crouch down, she still kept her arrow nocked and drawn, aimed just beyond Torgun's left shoulder. Lucy couldn't see why Torgun knelt either. Then, snowy lynx paws wrapped around Torgun's neck, and a fuzzy feline muzzle gave the side of his face a nuzzle. I told you to stay put, Torgun spoke gruffly to the lynx, who rubbed up against his leg after he stood up again. We have been gone a long while, Lucy excused Kitty's behavior. Phlebas immediately stopped casting the bolt of electric energy that he was preparing, and Zarina dropped the point of her arrow before releasing the tension in her string. Kitty walked a few steps into the dark, then came back to the group and gave Torgun a piercing look before she padded down the corridor again. She was confident that Torgun would follow her. Torgon spoke over his shoulder as he started following the lynx into the gloom ahead of them. She knows where to go. How does she know that? Zyrina wanted to know. Lucy shrugged. I don't know, but Torgon hasn't ever been wrong about what the kitty knows. Lucy kept in step, a little distance behind Torgon, humming a tune quietly to herself while holding the torch high. Torgon had light enough to see where he walked without blinding him. Phlebas and Zyrina followed quietly. Kitty, of course, did not need the light, but stayed close enough ahead that Torgon could make out the white and black swish of her tail every now and then at the edges of the light cast ahead of him. When Torgon stopped suddenly in the corridor, so did everyone else. No one was daydreaming this time. There was an exit from the main corridor off to the right, just at the edge of where the torch lit the darkness. Torgon spoke quietly. Kitty sat down and faced that opening. There must be something in that cavern, or she would have gone in there or past it. Still whispering, he nodded toward the entrance of the cavern. Be ready. It was a mid-sized cavern, with dripping stalactites and stalagmites growing up from the floor to meet them around the room. Steaming pools of greenish mineral water collected in some of the hollows formed by the constant dripping. In the middle of the room there were several dead bodies on the ground around a small glowing lantern. But the most striking of the peculiars was a large shimmering lich in the middle of the room who had just turned from its killing spree. Torgon drew his axe and took a deep breath. Zyrina stepped from the back of the group and worked her way up to beside Torgon. When they touched shoulders, it was time.
Ah!
Torgon's shout as he sprang through the door caught the attention of the lich. Next, Phlebas stepped through the doorway and spoke the final words of his fire ring spell. A large circle of flame shot up around the lich. The fire only burned Phlebas' target. Torgon was untouched by the inferno. Torgon led off with a knockdown, pushing the lich right into the middle of Phlebas' magical blaze. Zyrina entered to see Torgon swing his axe and strike the lich. The reverberation stuck the lich in place. Her arrows soon followed. She knew Phlebas' spells would not be the most helpful in this fight. Physical strikes were the most effective way to overcome the magical monster. Liches were powerful mages, but if Torgon and Phlebas could hold the lich in place, she could send arrow after arrow into the target. Phlebas' spells were long and complicated. Every time he was interrupted, he had to begin at the beginning. Magic was not very effective against a powerful lich mage because of all the interruptions, but he was doing what he could to assist. Zyrina was learning that it was worth her effort to make sure no one interrupted him while he was casting, and she took it upon herself to be his protector while he cast. It had taken him years to learn and perfect these spells, but they were magnificent. She was proud of her friend. He had only been a handful of years out of childhood when they had parted. Now he had grown into a resourceful, skilled mage. She grinned and went back to firing arrows one after the other. With Lich now stuck in place, Phlebas was already deciding on his next spell, as he felt the healing touch of Lucy nearby. Lucy was casting a spell that she called Soothing Rain. It would keep healing each of them for a short time while they fought, no matter where they went in the room. Phlebas was speaking a spell that would create a fire elemental wisp. It would strengthen any of the fire spells he cast. Immediately after it materialized like a human-sized flame beside him, he began another ring of fire. Between them, Torgon and Phlebas kept the lich pinned in place. Zyrina kept firing arrow after arrow, even though it felt like she was assaulting thin air. Lucy helped everyone when she added some kind of boost to their health and movement speed with a song she was playing on her harp, while interspersing faster healing spells to each of them individually. Her calls of Asen Reno could be heard over and over again. It was this welcome surge of energy that helped Zyrina to stay focused when the Lich started wearing away at her defenses. She fired arrow after arrow in piercing shots. The battle did not take long. Soon enough, the Lich was a crumpled heap of opaque gelatin at their feet, and Torgun was nudging it with his foot to make sure it stayed dead. He dropped to kneel it for a moment, after making sure the thing was not coming back to life. "Ancestors," was all he would say when he stood and saw Zyrina's questioning eyebrow. "Are these dead the kobolds that ran off earlier, or the ones who left before we arrived? Is the book on any of them?" Phlebas was already looking through the pockets and bags of the closest body. "They aren't all kobolds. Look, this one is an elf. High-ranked mage by the look of it." Zyrina showed the body. She had just turned over onto its back and was laying on its own, by one of the pools of the dark corner of the cave. "Elves, too?" Lucy's eyes went round. "This is really too much." Phlebas called from the back of the room where he had gone to examine yet one more of the stone statues. "There is an elf back here with a letter in its pocket, too. I can't read the beginning of it. It's smudged." He read aloud. "Listen to this. Have my suspicions about the fidelity of that mage we discussed previously. You know the one, the quiet one? I can't recall his name. He doesn't seem to take the usual approach to any of our activities here in the temple, and doesn't allow anyone to say, 'Because we always did it that way,' as an acceptable answer to his queries about procedure. I'm not sure if you remember he grew up here. Captured as a baby from one of the villages we passed through a couple of decades ago. The Southern Red Branch has been the only family he has known, and he has been a trial for us to raise. I still doubt the wisdom of keeping him here, but bowed to the council's request. After we realized he would not be a good volunteer for the procedure to bind him with a dragon, things deteriorated even further. You remember the reports of his protests when he found out that we used spiders from the southern caverns to conduct our early experiments? The protest signs? The petitions? Yes, well, lately he has begun questioning the wisdom of casting spells using the assistance of the moon shards. Can you imagine? It's not like he asks many questions. I've barely heard him speak, and not often above a whisper, but those questions stick with you. Like this one. Does it hurt the dragon when we merge it with another being? What a silly question. Regardless of the cable's trials, I look forward to a visit with you. My best regards to your family, Nestor. I am certain we'll be out of this mine for Sequana's feast, and can meet at... I can't read the rest. Zyrina spoke up then. This kobold has part of a letter too. I don't think kobolds wrote this, either. This bit is addressed to Nestor, the Southern Red Branch. Listen. The Liches definitely have the book. Several of our mages have gone to the room of casting to retrieve it from them. After they left, several kobolds came screeching past our hiding spot in this cavern, then continued down the corridor and up to the Lich room. I think the kobolds are trying to claim the book for themselves after having discovered its power when they came upon the experiment room. It's a good thing we are already leaving when the kobolds battled their way through the troll guards. I'm certain they did not see us sneak out of the area while they were fighting. I'm confident in the abilities of our mages to withstand a few kobold miners with weapons, but it didn't seem needed. We are hiding here until the book is returned to us, or we are all lost trying to retrieve it. I realize its importance. I am certain it was left when we fled the room of casting yesterday during the Lich attack. If we had not forgotten it, we would have already left the area. The Liches who attacked us were members of the Duggan family. It seems they have been trying to protect their family member, Merrick Duggan, who is one of our human subjects in the experiment. There were several clones of that human that failed, but we used the original Merrick Duggan, and he lived through the transformation. There still are a few more specimens in the vats for further experiments. We had finished with the experiments on animals, as they were too stupid to try to control. I suppose all of that's moot now. We have to leave. Liches have been attacking for months, but the attacks intensified yesterday when the kobolds became aroused after discovering our trolls had an experiment room. The Liches are not in the mood to go back to their crypts. Kobolds are attacking everything they find, but they have left us alone so far in this cavern. But I don't feel Zyrina looked up then. Blood covers the rest of the page, she finished. Phlebas mused. Do you think this Nestor is their boss? Torgon reasoned. Regardless, I think some kobolds found these elves hiding here, killed them, and then were plundering when the Liches attacked them. The mages are all elves! Lucy shouted far too loudly in her excitement. Does that mean the mages who had the book are all elves? No one moved for a moment, taking in what must have happened in the room just before they arrived. In the quiet of the gloom and the damp and sulphur-smelling cavern, Kitty spoke up. Meow. Torgon's chuckle filled the cavern before the others shushed him, but the silliness was a relief after their battle. They were soon all heaving with silent laughter each time their Kitty beckoned. Kitty, Torgon looked at his pet. What is it? Kitty left the room. Torgon followed. Come on, there are more of them, he called over his shoulder. Slowly the others regained their composure before turning to follow Torgon and Kitty from the cavern. I think Kitty knows more than we realize. Lucy voiced what they were all thinking as they gathered up their bags. It's a little spooky, all right. Okay, get ready. There are bound to be more of those Liches and elves, and maybe some kobolds too, Zyrina reminded them, as if they had forgotten. And trolls, don't forget them, Lucy muttered. Right. Kobolds, elves, Liches, and trolls, Phlebas grinned. Your favorite. He winked at Zyrina, who smiled but not laughed at Lucy's fear. It's not easy moving through the damp, dark, muddy tunnels far underground looking for Liches, elves, trolls, and kobolds. Not easy and not fun. Not at all. Torgon stood at the bend of the tunnel and grunted. The path split several ways. One of them rises. That's the path of the Liches. Hopefully the magic book is still there. It needs to be taken from those elven mages. Listen. You can hear the sounds of the battle now. Can you hear it? Then he shuddered with anticipation. He took his axe out of its holster before reaching down to just behind Kitty's ears and gently scratching the lynx standing by his knee. Thanks, Kitty. She melted into the shadows of the tunnel before they moved further on. Now they completely gave up stealth. The ones ahead in the fight could not hear anything but the battle around them, so it was a waste of time to try and hide any longer. After a short jog up the small incline and around a few bends, they entered what looked like an ancient room carved out of large blocks. There was a light streaming from somewhere. Phlebas was sure this was another of the ancient rooms that had been buried during the fall, or perhaps later, from the Obsidian period. They were found buried throughout all of New Britannia. There were large stone statues of humans leaning on the hilts of their swords, with the tip on the ground in front of each of them, in a line along each of the long walls. In the middle of the room, about halfway down the length, was a raised plinth with a big dragon leg bone laid on top of it. Nearby was a moon shard shackled with big metal chains to the ground. All that was at the base of the set of steps that led up to the throne at the very back of the room. Phlebas had no more time to contemplate the architecture. His spells were needed, and they took all of his focus to cast. He took a moment to collect his thoughts. Then something inside his head cleared, and he knew that he had reached that part of him that could touch the magic there. This magic always took something from him, too. He knew that no magic was created without cost. Sometimes that cost was his own body, like now. He continued to be more than willing to help his friend survive this battle, even if it meant a few changes for a few days. The changes were not usually permanent, and his hair had never remained snow white. He regained his dark luster in a matter of a few hours. His skin always smoothed back out, and his bent back straightened from the arthritic creaks that took hold of him while he cast. Magic that affected a whole area of enemies was incredibly draining to continue to cast, and took longer to recover from afterwards, too. This was the fourth battle of the day. Phlebas was beginning to look ancient and frail. He hoped that he had enough stamina and focus for the battle ahead of him. He felt the small pouch of vials Lucy had handed each of them earlier. "Take these when you have no power left, and they will rejuvenate you," she had promised. He knew she was the competent potion maker, and trusted that they would indeed revitalize him. She had also handed him some cold demon tea stored in a waterproof pouch. He never could figure out how she managed to always have exactly what he needed, but she did. Every time. He had sipped it quickly before entering the room. Torgun paused to take stock of what they faced before finding his first target. There were at least 2 liches that Torgun could see near the doorway that were not engaged in battle inside the room with the kobolds. There were several figures further in that were battling up the set of stairs. As quickly as he could, he took 2 deep breaths and then plunged himself into the fray. This time, it was not just a single lich. It was mayhem. There were many liches in battle with kobolds. Although the liches had killed most of the kobolds before they arrived, there were still a few battling the liches, and now battling Torgun too. Torgun hopped over a few of their bodies on his way through the battlefield. The waves of attacks by liches seemed to go on for hours, and by the end of it was difficult for Torgun to even raise his axe without shaking with strain. He was half-heartedly swiping at the last kobold when Zyrina's arrow pierced its chest, and it joined the others on the ground. Zyrina was out of poisonous arrows and had used all of her steel-headed ones. She had been picking them out of the dead and reusing the ones that still had integrity in the last minutes of battle. Over at the entrance of the room, Phlebas had been knocked completely out cold at the edge of fighting, but his eyes were now fluttering open as Lucy tended to him. Even Lucy's supply of reagents were sadly and nearly depleted, as they were all barely still standing from exhaustion. When the room was finally silent, Torgun dropped to his knee again, following this time by Zyrina. Lucy wove between the 2 of them, touching each and casting spells to speed their returning strength and health. She cleaned and patched superficial wounds as they recovered their breath. It has been a vicious fight. Yet, here they were, still alive, with a sizable pile of defeated liches and kobolds on the marble floor around the room. "Well, you 2 are in fairly good shape, considering. Even Phlebas is coming around after the bonk on the head." Lucy patted Phlebas gently on the back to reassure him as he pushed himself to a sitting position. "At least there weren't any trolls." Torgun chuckled. "Indeed not." When Torgun and Zyrina could stand, they began searching among the dead with Lucy. Zyrina kept her bow and remaining arrow in her hand, and Torgun did not sheath his axe. They were not sure there was going to be more fighting even, as they knew they would have a difficult time surviving another attack. After a few minutes of silence, Phoebus was ready to speak. Did anyone see the book? Unanimously, around the chamber there was a head shaking among the others. There are elves among the fallen, Zyrina reported as she bent over yet another body. I don't remember fighting any elves. They must have died before we arrived. Well, Lucy said quietly while exploring her up the stairs at the end of the room, there is a chest up here. That woke them all up. Chest? Phoebus repeated, with jumping up to his feet unsteadily. He nimbly ran up the flight of stairs, only to stop and stare with Lucy. Are you kidding me? Lucy was looking down at the mostly empty chest hidden behind the large throne. The book isn't here. There are a few wood scraps, a bit of gold, and some old clothing. Phoebus began feeling around the chest to check for a secret compartment. Down on the floor of the room, Zyrina and Torgun continued to go through the pockets of the fallen. It's not here. Phoebus sounded disappointed after his thorough search of the chest. It was just a common chest. There is a note in this fellow's pocket. Zyrina pulled the folded parchment from the pocket of the dead elf in front of her. It reads, "Success or death." This message says that too. Lucy threw the crumpled paper back to the ground after taking it from one of the fallen elves. I found something, Torgun called out. It was part of a letter that had obviously fallen out of someone's pocket and been trampled on in battle. Most of it was not readable, but the message was clear. Listen to this. Nestor, I write as we pack to leave. We will get the magic book back from the liches regardless to the cost of lives. Kobolds are close behind us. I can hear them in the passages. We have abandoned the experiment room. There is nowhere left to hide in these caves. Spiders and liches have taken over. Kobolds are digging everywhere and will soon find all of our secrets here. There are rumors that others are sneaking about. They must be searching for the Book of Magic too. Several more liches broken free of our control and turned to stone right in front of us. It is now confirmed that when using this magic book, that when we lose control of a subject, that they turn at once to stone. We shall teleport once we have recovered the magic book from the liches in their lair. One more battle, success or death. The rest of the page is torn and covered in bodily fluids. The southern red branch got here first. Then he spat. Such a small clue and so profound. Turned to stone? Lucy was considering something. Did he say that the subjects were turned to stone when they lost control of them? Yes, that's exactly what was written here. Apparently, those people in Jade Valley had been under control of these mages for some time. Phoebus bleakly pointed out. Governor Harry is not going to like that at all. Where are the Red Branch now? Torgun asked quietly and grimly. Who is Nestor? Lucy asked again. I don't know, Lucy, but I'm sure going to find out. Torgun vowed. I'll join you, Phoebus pledged. The governor will want to know more about the Southern Red Branch. As I'm sure will Lord British and Arabella. I don't think they have suspected that the old obsidian magics are being revived right under our noses. Zyrina was searching for any signs or possible direction. The Southern Red Branch had gone, but there was nothing. Teleport scrolls, she frowned and sniffed. We won't find them now. Phlebas knew from experience that if Zyrina couldn't find a residue, that no track could be found. Teleport scrolls were the worst. After reading the words on a scroll, the reader is transported through space to a new location in Novia. The location is chosen new each time a scroll is read. Then the scroll disappears as well, in a puff of blue smoke, completely untraceable. Zyrina hated them. Then there's no way to find out where they've gone, Phlebas shook his head. They won't be back now that this secret enclave has been routed, and they have the Zyrina got to her feet beside him. Zyrina snorted. Phlebas, when was the last time you bathed? Phlebas looked startled, then shrugged, and laughed heartily. Apparently after I have a bath, that is. There was a general chuckle around the group. After gazing around fondly at his friends as they gathered their things to find their way out of the mine, he could hear Torgun telling Lucy what it was he wanted to do topside. A meal in a hot tub sounded perfect to him too, in that order. Thank you, my friends. You have bravely fought with me to protect this town and valley. I have great respect for your skills and talents, and the honor of fighting alongside each of you makes me very proud to call you my friends. We were able to discover what was causing the trouble here in Jade Valley, maybe even stopped it from happening again. But we don't stop there. We seek justice for those who have suffered loss. With patience and wisdom, we may yet discover where the Southern Red Branch has fled. They may have gotten away this time, but our search continues. He thumped his fist for emphasis. We know what signs to look for now. We have done what we have set out to do, even if the answer was far grimmer than we imagined it. The loss of John the caretaker weighs heavily on my spirit, as I'm sure it does on each of you. They were all silent for a moment, recalling finding John in the cavern across from the trolls. The valley will know what happened to their family, friends, and their livestock. This day we will expose the Southern Red Branch. This day we chase them from this fair valley. They may go into hiding. We will wait. We are patient. That malevolence needs to be addressed, and we are more than up to the task. We shall prevail. And he finished with a flourish of his hands that cast a boost of the spirit of each of them, seemingly unintentional. The effects were obvious. The group seemed all to stand a little taller. Lucy snorted. Did you practice that while we were fighting? She winked at Phlebas. That was a better speech than the one you gave when we were heading out into the unknown. Then she broke out into a fit of laughter. It was infectious, and soon the whole group was grinning. Even Zyrina lowered her bow, then smiled. After gathering up their belongings, Torgun led the group out. Turning left upon leaving the room of casting, he soon spotted Kitty waiting patiently at the exit to the main mining area. It was a long walk out of the mine to go tell the townsfolk that the mine was empty of kobolds. Did you think your first assignment was worth it? Lucy inquired of Phlebas as they trudged back to the entrance of the mine. Yes, he grinned. Absolutely. It's too bad that we can't follow the Red Branch anymore, but I'll keep looking for them. I'm sure someone will want to know where they have gone. I just want an ale and some sleep. I'll even buy the first round, she winked at Phlebas. And that's what I like to hear, Torgun stepped took on a little more spring. Come on, let's get out of this place. We're done. Zyrina sounded as if she were relieved that they were at the end of their adventure. For now. May you all find the courage, the truth, and the love in your own lives. Till next we find the magic.
And that was Podcasts and Poetry. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the stories. They are great stories coming from our very own Shroud of the Avatar community. If you missed any of it, this episode will be repeated Saturday 8 a.m. and Sunday midday Pacific time on Avatars Radio. In the meantime, have a great week and hope to catch you next time. Goodbye for now.